Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce to you a device used in the 19th century by the pioneers of acoustic physics to create musical tones by puffs of air. Its name is Sirens. In Joyce's Sirens, Bloom's body also produces tiny musical tones by puffs of air. Acoustic physics studies the behavior of bodies producing air and elastic bodies producing vibration when excited. Sirens opens with a static image, bronze by gold. They stand still until Lydia, or Agog, transmits eagerly her excitation to Mina, whose body vibrates more eagerly. This dramatizes the scientific definition of sympathetic vibration. A vibration produced in one body by the vibration of the same period in a neighboring body. That's why Lydia and Mina urged each to peal after peal, ringing in changes, bronze gold, gold bronze, to laughter after laughter. When an excited Lenechian forces Lydia to sonner la cloche, they dramatize another scientific definition. Sound is a peculiar sensation excited in the organ of hearing by the vibratory motion of bodies when this motion is transmitted to the ear through an elastic medium, Lydia's garter. The sinusoidal wave produced by a vibration generates notes and loops, as suggested when Bloom looped, unlooped, noded, disnoded his elastic rubber band, which vibrates like Lydia's elastic garter. The text underlines the allegorical values of these vibrations relating one to the other. Bloom unwound slowly the elastic band of his pocket, love's old sweet sonella gold. In acoustic physics, the verbs to stretch and to bend describe the behavior of vibrating bodies. The same verbs are overused in Sirens to describe the posture of several characters, especially Lydia. For example, she stretches her satin arm to take a glass, she bends 4 times when she's about to let her garter snap, and shares the misfortunes of the poor croppy boy bending in sympathy to hear. Handbooks on musical acoustics published at the turn of the 20th century usually show 3 objects: a siren, then a pendulum, whose movement reproduces the behavior of sound waves. At the Ormond, of course, the pendulum recalls Molly's meeting with Boylan at 4, but it also evokes the oscillatory motion of sound waves, swinging to and fro. To and fro, to swing, to wave, to sway. All these expressions are used in Sirens. A third device, usually reproduced in handbooks on acoustic physics, is the vacuum bell jar, proving experimentally that sound only exists in the presence of air. If we substitute the ring inside the bell with one lonely, last sardine of summer, we get the Ormond's sandwich bell, which, unlike the scientific device, contains air. Air, without which vibration, sounds, and music wouldn't exist. If Bloom gives his musical contribution to the episode by unpleasant emissions of air, the other characters are not far behind. While dramatizing the phenomenon of sympathetic vibration, Lydia and Mina grunt, laugh, huff, snort, shriek, scream, pant, sigh, giggle, choke, cough, give full vent to a splendid yell, until after these emissions of air, they remain all breathless. Other characters coo, yodel, growl, roar, murmur, sigh, gasp. The piano tuner's curses and the tea delivery boy's murmuring are explosive emissions of air, impertinent. Bob Coyley's bad breath is underlined. Bloom defines the cider he drank a gassy thing full of air, and observes splashes of beer froth containing air. Lenechian drinks a bubbled ale. The air in Cork improved the voice of Simon Dedalus, who praises the Moor Mountains' healthy air. Many musical airs are performed or named. Bloom and Goulding repeatedly praise a beautiful air. A melody spreads through the hush of air, and when it's over, Bloom remarks on the silent air. Outside the Ormond, Bloom, who is producing air, feels freer in air. This happens in an episode whose title evokes the machine producing musical puffs of air. So, what do we have in Sirens? Music, of course, then sounds, vibrations, and air. Maybe these are the four voices in an episode conceived as a musical fugue. While planning the making of Sirens, Joyce transcribed a supposed structure of a musical fugue, and between the last two parts, he added the cryptic note mystery word. And I'm trying to prove that the mystery word for Sirens is air. Air, besides allowing the existence of all acoustic phenomena, is the arche, the first principle giving origin to all things according to Anaximenes. Now, let me preface this by stating that Sirens is the first in a section made up of 4 episodes, until Auction of the Sun. This section, so particular in terms of form, is the product of Joyce's manipulation of a specific matter, the doctrine of 4 pre-Socratic philosophers. Why should Joyce insert a pre-Socratic section in Ulysses? For the same reason that drove him to add journalistic headings to the text of Aeolus, the pursuit of the Walter-Paterian and Aristotelian perfect identification of matter and form, the backbone of Ulysses. The first words of the pre-Socratic section of Ulysses are bronze by gold. Joyce came across this combination as far back as 1903, when he noted on his early commonplace book the Aristotelian sentence, "A sense receives the form without the matter." This summarizes a passage from On the Soul in which Aristotle states that a sense is that which receives sensible forms without the matter, and as the wax takes on the impression of the signet ring without the iron or gold, and receives the impression of the gold or bronze, but not as gold or bronze. In another passage from the Physics, Aristotle uses the combination bronze-gold as a synonym with matter having an inner predisposition to receive the form that the artist will shape out of it. Now, the primal matter for Cyclops is the philosophy of Heraclitus, praising intolerance, contrast, war, the topics of the episode. The doctrine of Heraclitus came down to us through 130 Satzharmink, short fragments. The translation of that unintelligible Hungarian word is 130 lumps of a philosophical goulash that makes me sick. The warmongering philosophy of Heraclitus makes Joyce sick, especially the moment he wrote Cyclops, a few months after the end of the First World War, fought by the Austro-Hungarian Empire, which also included Trieste, from which Joyce was compelled to flee with his family. Here's Heraclitus, as depicted by Donato Bramante, and Joyce knew this painter if only because he lived in Via Bramante in Trieste. Here, Heraclitus, much like the citizen in Cyclops, looks like a broad-shouldered, deep-chested, strong-limbed, frank-eyed, red-haired, freely freckled, shaggy-bearded, wide-mouthed, large-nosed, long-headed, brawny-handed, ruddy-faced hero. And directly from Nausicaa, here's the mystery man on the beach. And take note of his carbuncular nose with the pimples on it and his sandy moustache a bit white under his nose. This is Pythagoras, on display at the Musei Capitolini in Rome, a short distance from where Joyce used to live and work in 1906-07. Auction of the Sun, showing the parallel development of a human embryo and English literary history, deals with the idea of becoming, a concept which is denied by Parmenides, who delivers his doctrine in a poem whose first image depicts himself as standing in front of the gates of night and day while a goddess welcomes him. And Bloom, at night's homecoming, on the threshold of night and day, stands in front of the gate of the hospital and is welcomed by a kind nurse. As for Sirens, the primary matter molded by Joyce to give it a form is the philosophy of Anaximenes, who came from Miletus, a city in western Turkey in a region known in ancient times as Lydia. Miletus was an Ionic colony, and Ionian is the last entry noted by Joyce in the section of the Scribble the Hotbull notebook relating to Sirens. According to Anaximenes, everything is originated by and returns to air, even Bloom's gassy cider. Air gives origin to all things by a dual process of rarefaction and condensation, the same phenomenon allowing the production of sound. As John Tyndall explains, a sonorous wave consists of two portions, in the one of which the air is more dense, loops, and in the other of which it is less dense than usual, notes. A condensation and a rarefaction are the two constituents of a wave of sound. The style of Sirens aims to imitate the behavior of sound waves, especially in the overture, where the compression of single words or entire sentences reproduces the process of condensation. In general, the stylistic devices analyzed by Zach Bowen in musical terms, assonance, alliteration, repetition, onomatopoeia, staccato, sustain, creates a continuous effect of rarefaction and condensation of the text. How does Anaximenes explain the origin of all things by the rarefaction and condensation of air? When it is dilated as to be rarer, air becomes fire, while winds are condensed air. Clouds are formed by felting, and these, still further condensed, become water. Water, condensed still more, turns to earth, and finally to rock. The first stages of this process are dramatized by Mr. Daedalus's pipe. On inhaling air, Simon produces fire, then clouds. The allegorical function of the pipe is highlighted when Mr. Daedalus laid his pipe to rest beside the tuning fork. This is an epiphany. On the piano, the symbol of music spreading in the air, and beside the tuning fork, the symbol of vibration spreading in the air, lies the pipe, the symbol of air. The allegorical function of Simon's pipe is anticipated when Bloom enters the scene walking by Mulan's pipes. They are still prevented from reproducing the phenomena of rarefaction and condensation, which, on the other hand, are evoked by the poster showing a swaying mermaid smoking mid-night waves, Anaximenian clouds turning into water. The last stage of transformation of air is rock, and Simon, while lighting his pipe, states from the rock of Gibraltar. Besides the rarefaction and condensation of air, other key points in the philosophy of Anaximenes are the infinity of air, its unceasing movement, and the identification with breath and life. And Bloom, looking at Lydia, thinks, heart beats, her breath, breath that is life. The concepts of infinity of the air and the identification of breath and life are evoked in a passage whose subject, more than Lionel's air from Martha, is the air on which it soared, the bird, it held its flight, a swift pure cry, soar silver orb, it lived, serene, speeding, sustained, to come, don't spin it out too long, long breath, he breathed long life, soaring high, high, all soaring all around about the all, the endlessness, and 6 ellipsis points, the infinity of air and its unceasing movement. Many treatises on musical acoustics were available to Joyce, but several clues suggest that the main source for Sirens is to be found in Sound, a course in 8 lectures by John Tyndall, the famous scientist that Joyce mentions in Ireland, Island of Saints and Sages, a talk he delivered in Trieste in 1907. Tyndall's 8 lectures opens with an accurate description of air's unceasing movement and mentions 2 objects also present in Sirens, Lydia's rose and shell. The various nerves of human body have their origin in the brain, and the brain is the seat of sensation. What nerves convey to the brain is in all cases motion. It is the motion excited in the olfactory nerves by the fluvium of a rose, which announces itself in the brain as the odor of the rose. The motion here meant is the vibration or tremor of its molecules, the tremor of a rose tremor. The village where Lydia picked up her shell, and here comes the shell. John Tyndall further shows the infinity of air by producing a noisy blast, explaining the air at a little distance passed its motion on to the air at a greater distance, and came also in its turn to rest. Each shell of air took up the motion of the shell next preceding, and transmitted it to the next succeeding shell. Tyndall is the only scientist who uses the rose and the shell to describe the endlessness of the movement of air conveying a sound. So Lydia's rose and shell take on a powerful symbolic meaning. Joyce's ability, infusing realism with symbolism or allegory, reaches its apex in Sirens, where ordinary objects like a shell or a pendulum, a sandwich bell or a pipe, a rubber band or an elastic garter, the very bodies of Lydia and Bloom, Lydia's name, they all convey unexpected allegorical meanings. They allude to physical phenomena which allude to the philosophy of Anaximenes, which is connected to the existence of a pre-Socratic section, which implements the Aristotelian perfect identification of matter and form, the backbone of Ulysses, I insist. And the question of the perfect identification of matter and form, in turn, is linked with the overall Thomistic structure of Ulysses. This is a topic that we cannot examine here, but I do believe that the actual hidden structure of Ulysses, which conditions so many aspects of the novel, is a question that still requires open discussion and further investigation. Thank you so much. See you next time.